Well, good morning, y'all. How are you? We good? Hey, so I am the person that Michelle was just talking about, like the archetypal weather complainer. I am that person. When I woke up yesterday and we're in Houston and it felt like I was in the Arctic, I'm not okay with that. But I am the guy who 2 months ago was not okay with 100-degree weather. I just don't know what I want. But I know that I woke up yesterday morning at like 5:30 to go play in a cricket tournament. True story. Yeah, woo, one person likes cricket. That's never happened. No one's ever wooed for cricket. I'm so proud of the Loft Church. But I was going to play cricket and I looked at my watch and saw what time it was or what degree it was outside. And I was like, oh, why do I have to wear a sweater? And then I got to the field and I was like, I really wish I packed a sweater. I regret my life decisions, So, well, welcome to the Loft. We're so thankful you're here this morning. We are continuing a series called This Is How We Know. And the series is taking place in the first epistle that John wrote called 1 John. And I'm really pumped to go through it because 2 years ago, we went through this book at Emerge. Every single week for a lot longer than 7 weeks, we went through the epistle of 1 John. All of that to say, I'm setting myself up to say that I really hope I know what I'm talking about because we did this 2 years ago. So when there's a couple Emerge people in the room, they'll know if I hit the nail on the head. So a couple points that I want to make this morning about the epistle of 1 John. And the first one is this, that John was most likely the best friend of Jesus. Jesus was his best friend. If not his best friend, he was definitely one of the closest friends of Jesus, and we see evidence of that in the scriptures. One of the evidences of that is that at least 5 times in the scriptures, John is called the disciple whom Jesus loved. We read that in John chapter 13, verse 23, John chapter 19, verse 26, John chapter 20, verse 2, 21, verse 7, and 21, verse 20. Side note, notice that it says he's the disciple whom Jesus loved in John's letter. Do you like that? Like Matthew wasn't like, and John was the disciple who Jesus loved, But John's like, no, but he loved me, I just think that's so funny. And you better believe there was some bickering amongst the disciples, right? And then John's like, but he loves me, But John, or Luke and Matthew, they didn't say that in their letters. I just think that's so funny. It's so good. Theologians believe that John was the last living disciple when he penned the first epistle. Most believe that he was an old man at this point. He was an elder amongst this group of people, and we see evidence of that even in the way that he writes the epistle, because numerous times he calls the people who he is speaking to his little children. So a lot of people believe that at this point he's speaking to second and third generation Christians. A lot of people believe that John may have lived upwards to 100 years old. So this is a man as an elder who's passing on some information to us. And y'all, that kind of makes this come alive for me. It changes this epistle. On top of all of that, John has seen every single one of his closest friends die a martyr's death. Most historians believe that every single disciple except for John had died a martyr's death, that they died for the cause of Christ. Even more so than that, John, one of the disciples, was his brother James. And people believe that James was the first disciple who was martyred for the cause of Christ. John went through an awful lot. He's an elderly man who's speaking from a place of seeing all of those around him die for the cause of the gospel. Not only did he see the disciples die, he saw his brother die, but he saw his best friend, the God of the universe, go to the cross. And then we read what he writes in this epistle in just a moment. So I have a question for you. How many of you have a best friend? How many of you have a best friend? A few of you? Like 5? Cool. I'm glad. We'll pray for you. I'm just kidding. If you are dating someone and/or you are not, and you are married and you did not raise your hand, woo! That's gonna be worse than the couch, all right? It's gonna be a bad night for you. As a matter of fact, Stu Grant, he does marriage counseling. You speak to him. Michelle Manuel is now in charge of our prayer ministry. If you'd like to speak to Michelle, that was a terrible joke. I will move on. My best friend growing up, it would be really bad if I said my best friend was like Bob and not Deanna right now, right? That'd be bad. But Deanna is my best friend. And the cool thing is I've been best friends with Deanna since before we ever dated. As a matter of fact, when we met in high school, there was not even a mutual attraction. I don't know how she wasn't attracted to me, but I can say that only this morning because she was here last night. So I didn't say it last night. That was just for you guys and the YouTube. This will live forever. We were best friends in high school before we ever dated, and I think this is actually a really sweet story of how Dee and I met. So 2 weeks before my senior year of high school, I became a Christian. And when I became a Christian, I lost every single friend that I had. My friends wanted nothing to do with me anymore. Y'all, as a high schooler, that was a big deal. My best friend since I was 4 years old didn't want to be my friend anymore because I was like that Christian guy. So the first day of my senior year of high school, I remember walking to the lunchroom and realizing like it was like the moment where I was like, I don't know where I'm gonna sit for lunch as a senior in high school, y'all. This is a big deal. And this girl came up to me, her name was Stacy. And Stacy was like, hey, you should come sit at our lunch table. And I was like, oh, thank the Lord, because this was gonna be bad, And I go and I sit at Stacy's lunch table, and sitting right next to me at the lunch table was Deanna. I sat next to Deanna, my future wife. And I started talking to Deanna, and at this point, I am like, I need friends badly, and I'm gonna make friends however it takes, even if that means lying, all right? Not good. I've been a Christian for 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm gonna lie to make friends with other Christians. Awesome. So we start talking, and Deanna's like kind of sharing what she is passionate about. She's like, oh, I really like soccer. I'm on the cross country team. And she's like, well, what are your interests? So in that moment, I decided to take my foot and shove it in my mouth. And I was like, well, I kind of like to run. I did not kind of like to run, but I was like, oh, I kind of like to run. And y'all, I was a girthy boy, all right? That was my really nice way of saying I was really out of shape, okay? And I was like, oh, I really like to run. And Deanna's so gracious, like she probably could have looked at me and been like, no, you don't. But she was like, oh, cool. Tell me about that. And I'm like, I don't really know what to say. Is it kilometers or is it miles, So then Deanna's like, well, I'm training for cross-country season, and I've been looking for someone to train with. And I'm like, what did I do? And so it progresses, it gets better. Then we find out in that same conversation that Deanna lives 1 mile from my house. And she was like, oh yeah, we should go running sometime this week. And I was like, oh gosh, what do I do? And I was like, oh, cool, well, I could come pick you up if you live 1 mile away. She proceeds to say, oh, it's just 1 mile. I'll run to your house, then we'll take another run. 1 mile? Like, who runs 1 mile? I never have. I don't understand the pleasure in it, unless I'm running to the store to buy some candy or something. But so Deanna runs to my house, and she's like not even breathing heavy. Awesome. My dad just loves it, by the way. My dad's like, this is gonna be the greatest thing ever, And we take a run. We're running to Shamrock Park, which was about 0.75 miles from my front door. I made it 0.25 miles from my front door. And I looked at Deanna, and like when you breathe heavy, but it's more than a breathe, it's like this deep guttural noise that humans shouldn't be able to make. That's what I started. It was like, and at that point, Deanna knew that I was a farce and a liar. Deanna knew that I was a liar. There was a point to this story, I promise you. This was me pivoting. Here's what I know, that Deanna's my best friend, and Deanna knows me at my best, and Deanna knows me at my worst. Deanna knows me at my best, and Deanna knows me at my worst. Your best friend knows you. They're gonna know the depths of who you are. John knew Jesus in a myriad of circumstances. John knew Jesus in the highest of highs, and John knew Jesus in the most difficult of days of Jesus' life. He knew him. And here he is at the end of his life. He knows Jesus better than most, and he has seen his friends die for the cause of Christ. And here's what he has to say to us. 1 John chapter 1, that which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we looked upon and have touched with our hands, concerning the word of life. The life was made manifest, and we have seen it. Like Jesus has walked next to me. And testify to it and proclaim to you the eternal life, which was with the Father and was made manifest to us. That which we have seen and heard, we proclaim also to you, so that you too may have fellowship with us. And indeed, our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. And we are writing these things to you so that our joy may be made complete. John is saying, I have seen Jesus in the highest of highs. I have seen Jesus at the wedding feast in the biggest of celebrations as he is making water into wine. I have seen him in the highs. I have seen him celebrate. That same John is saying, and I have seen him in Mark 14 in the garden as he is on his knees before the Father and he's looking to the cross. And you know what Jesus says in Mark 14? He says, my soul is sorrowful. He has seen Jesus in every circumstance. And you know what he says? He is God. I have seen him. I have walked with him. I have touched him. And world, you need to know, even though I will most likely die for this statement, that he is Lord. Y'all, it's unpopular to say that today. 2,000 years ago, it usually meant you were gonna die. He knew his best friend, and he said he is God. Y'all, let me tell you what. Jesus, or Deanna, could discredit me after the first 5 minutes of meeting her, right? Like first 5 minutes, she could have been like, no. John said that his best friend was the Lord of the universe. The second point is this morning. When you encounter Jesus, your life will change. When you encounter Jesus, your life will change. We'll continue to look at the life of John, and we'll also enter his brother James into the story. All right, did you all know that they had a nickname? They had a nickname. We read it in the book of Mark. The nickname of John and James, they were called the Sons of Thunder. That's an awesome nickname, y'all. Like, I don't know about you, but like I picture like, I don't even watch wrestling, but I picture like a WCW belt, and they're like walking those, like Thunderstruck is about to play. No? Did I just say that in church? Cool. Thunderstruck, awesome. That was the first time I've said that all weekend. Moving on up. So they are the Sons of Thunder. I did not have a cool nickname like that growing up. You wanna know what my nickname was growing up? It was Gump. G-U-M-P, Gump. Not because I could run fast like Forrest Gump. It was because when Forrest Gump ran, he looked like he was gonna kick himself in the back of the head with his heel, and apparently that's how I ran. I had very high self-esteem in high school. My coaches would say, Price, you need to stop running like a bulldozer in a pit of mud. That was the other one. I've been in therapy ever since. It was great, you know? So the moral of this whole story, I don't run. All right, cool. The Sons of Thunder. When I think of the Sons of Thunder, I think of someone who's probably incredibly boisterous. We all probably have a friend like this, like someone who's incredibly boisterous. They definitely want you to know their opinions. They're incredibly passionate. And when they're passionate about something really good, it's empowering, right? Like you have a friend like that who they say something, you're like, I didn't even care about that, but now I do. Like I'm empowered to go and make a change in the world. But they're also the same friend because they're so passionate and boisterous that when they start saying something that is negative or it's not very good, you want to do the face palm. You know what I'm talking about? Anyone use the face palm emoji? Just me? Cool. It's my favorite emoji, this one. Because you're just like, oh, brother, what are they saying right now? The Son of Thunder. Let me read you a story about this Son of Thunder. So last time I preached, it's really cool that this kind of worked out, because last time I preached here, we talked about this great enmity between the Judean Jews and the Samaritan Jews, right? They were next door neighbors, and they absolutely hated each other. They did not like each other at all, and this hatred ran both ways. Last time we talked about how the Judean Jews didn't like the Samaritans. Now we're about to read about the Samaritans not liking the Judean Jews, and then we're gonna talk about our protagonist here, the Son of Thunder. You ready? This is so good and so sad. Luke chapter 9 says this: when the days drew near for him to be taken up, Jesus is going to the cross, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. And he sent messengers ahead of him who went and entered a village of the Samaritans to make preparations for him. But the people did not receive him because his face was set toward Jerusalem. In other words, Jesus needed a place to stay the night. It so happened to be in Samaria, and the Samaritans are like, he's not staying here. And here we go, you ready? And when his disciples, James and John, the Sons of Thunder, saw it, they said, "Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" Well, that escalated quickly. Like, I feel like the natural progression would be like, do you want us to say they're jerks? Nope. They're just like, we're gonna call the fires down from the heavenly places. First of all, they're talking to God, so that's weird, right? Like, step back, Jesus, we got it, you know? And then Jesus' response, but he turned and rebuked them. Good. That's a good thing. And they went on to another village. Yeah. Yeah. Here's this guy and his passion and his boisterous opinions. He's like, hey, you want us to kill an entire village? And then we've been reading in this epistle, the same man who is that passionate man is now saying repeatedly through the epistle, love your neighbors, love your brothers and sisters. That's how we know that you are a Christian, that you will love the children of God. So this same guy, what changed in his life? He spent time with Jesus. That's what changed. He spent time with Jesus. Y'all, when we encounter Jesus, our lives will be changed. And here is what I think is pretty amazing too. It's not that Jesus then stifled or snuffed out the passion of John. He didn't take away his passion. He just redirected it. He didn't take his passion away. He just redirected it. John is still the son of thunder. John is still incredibly boisterous and passionate, but he's passionate for the cause of loving the Lord and loving other people. I mean, we just read in those first few verses of 1 John that he says to the world, knowing that if he says this to the world, he most likely will die, that Jesus is Lord and the only God. And that's a passionate declaration. It's from a passionate man. We've been reading through this epistle, and we've also read that he spoke very emphatically against the practice of sin. He's passionate about it. He's the son of thunder. We've also read in this epistle that he speaks passionately and boldly against false teachers who've been coming into the church and infiltrating the church of that day. The Lord did not stifle his passion. He redirected his passion. In the first epistle of John, we're reading from this passionate man. And why? Because when we encounter Jesus, like John, our lives will be changed. The third and final point is this, and this is taken from our passage this week in 1 John chapter 5, but it says this: if you love Jesus, you will obey his commandments. If you love Jesus, you will obey his commandments. Let's read 1 John chapter 5. Everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ has been born of God. And everyone who loves the Father loves whoever has been born of him. By this, we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and we obey his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. For everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. Who is it that overcomes the world except the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God? This is how we know that we love the children, that we love Jesus, that we would obey the Father's commands. And what does the Father command? I mean, John says it multiple times throughout his epistle, and it's really quite simple. Sometimes we overcomplicate it, but it's pretty simple. He says, we love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we love our neighbors as ourselves. And y'all, it's simple. I'm not saying that it's not difficult at times. It could still definitely be difficult at times. But he's saying that we'll obey the commands. We'll love the Lord our God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we will love our neighbors as ourselves. What kind of love is this? It's a love called agape. Michelle talked about it last week, and we'll talk about it a little bit more right now. It's sacrificial love. It's the kind of love that would go to the cross. It's a love for people that just might be an inconvenience. There's a quote that I read from a blog that I read, and one of the cool things I love, I'd love to give credit to who wrote this, but this blog doesn't tell you who the author is. It's just these kind of anonymous blogs that they write. And I read this, and it was very impactful for me. Agape love is a little different. It is not a feeling, it's a motivation for action that we are free to choose or reject. Agape is a sacrificial love that voluntarily suffers inconvenience, discomfort, and even death for for the benefit of another without expecting anything in return. I want to read that one more time. Agape love is a little different. It is not a feeling. It's a motivation for action that we are free to choose or reject. Agape is a sacrificial love that voluntarily suffers inconvenience, discomfort, and even death for the benefit of another without expecting anything in return. One of my favorite passages in all of the scriptures about agape love is found in Ephesians chapter 5. It says this, therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children and walk in agape as Christ agaped us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Y'all, so confession time this morning. I make it sound like this is gonna be bad. It's actually, I think it's a great thing. I'm a massive NBA fan. Does anyone like the NBA in here? Any basketball fans? Yes, I mean, cool. Last service, there was one. It was great. I was like, yeah, me either. I hate it. I retract that statement, So I love the NBA so much that I love the NBA. It might be a little bit of a problem. Not I have to talk to someone about it. Well, here I am talking about it, so maybe it's a problem. But I watch a lot of basketball. And I actually was at game 3 of the ALCS, the Astros game, and it was really depressing. I'm still trying to get over it. And I was sitting right by the tunnel where that kind of separates you from like really good seats, but then like the $1 million seats, you know what I'm talking about? Like they're like right there, I can see them, they look cushiony and great, but they were like right over the tunnel. And I'm watching the game, it's like the second inning, and I can like see everybody who's going through the tunnel. And all of a sudden, I look to my right, and Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, and James Harden are at the tunnel. And I did not know that fangirling was a thing that I could do. I did it. I was like, what? And my wife's next to me, I was like, what? Yeah. Like, what do I do? They're right. I could like reach down and give like a little love tap on the head, or give James Harden a little beard. Okay, weird. But you get it, the beard. So they're right next to me. I start freaking out. I freak out so badly that I'm like, Carmelo Anthony, I hope you guys beat the Pelicans on opening night. They didn't. And then he gave me a high five, and I was like, I'm never washing this hand, And I don't even really like Carmelo Anthony that much. But can I name it? No? Okay, cool. So I love the NBA so much. And one of my favorite stories about the NBA is a story about a man named Maurice Stokes. Maurice Stokes was an NBA basketball player from 1956 to 1958. Maurice was an African-American in the midst of the civil rights movement, playing on an NBA team at a time when the NBA would only allow 2 African-Americans on each team. And Maurice was one of the best players in the world. In 1956, he won the Rookie of the Year award. In 1957, he led the NBA in rebounds. And in 1956, 57, and 58, all 3 of the years that he played, he was on the NBA All-Star team. If you read any blogs about Maurice Stokes, most people believe that he would have gone on to be one of the greatest players to ever play in the NBA. Well, Maurice Stokes, in the height of his career, was playing in 1958, the very last game of the NBA season. And during the game, he went up for a rebound, and he landed awkwardly on top of a player, and then he came down and he hit his head on the court. When he hit his head, he was knocked unconscious. And when he was unconscious, a medical representative from the team had to come over and open some smelling salts to wake him up. When Maurice woke up, he literally was like, Coach, I'm ready to play. He just jumped right back in the game and kept playing the game. Well, when the game was over, he looked at his teammate, who happened to be one of his best friends, a white man at that time, which is amazing. His best friend, who was Jack Twyman, and he said, I'm not feeling well. I almost feel like I have the flu, or the flu is coming on. Started to sweat a little bit, and fast forward 3 days later was the first game of the NBA playoffs that season. They were playing in Detroit. They were playing against Detroit, and Maurice Stokes played the game. He had 15 rebounds and 16 points. And when the game was over, he looked at his friend again, Jack, and said, I don't feel right. Something's going on. I don't know if it's the flu. I don't know what's happening. And they got on an airplane. They were leaving Detroit to head back to Cincinnati, where they were from at the time. And when he got on the plane, he started to break out in cold sweats. And then Maurice Stokes went into a coma on the airplane. When they landed, they brought him to a hospital, and in Cincinnati, he woke up the next day, and when Maurice Stokes woke up, the only thing that he could move were his eyes. Can you imagine on a Saturday night playing in an NBA game and being one of the best players in the world to waking up 24 hours later on a Sunday and you can't move your body? So part of this story is that Maurice, his family lived in Pittsburgh, but he was in Cincinnati, so he didn't have anyone who can make decisions for him. And Jack Twyman, his teammate, decided to become the legal guardian of Maurice Stokes. And I wanted to share just a little bit of this story through a video this morning that we can check out. One of the stories that impacted me a lot about this was that after Jack Twyman became the legal guardian of Maurice, for the rest of Maurice's life, every Sunday he would be taken from the hospital and he would have dinner every Sunday evening at the Twyman house. And one of the things that Jack says about Maurice is that never once, until the day that he died in 1970, never once did Maurice become depressed or did Maurice complain about his plight. But he actually said that every single morning he would look at Jack and say, I am so thankful for a new day. So Maurice died in 1970 in his sleep of a heart attack. And then in 2004, Maurice was inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame. And when he was inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame, Jack Twyman was the person who was called to accept the award on his behalf. And it's one of the most amazing speeches in NBA history. And I just implore you, if you have time, it's about 9 minutes to check out this video. It's on YouTube, but I wanted to play just a minute of this clip this morning. That's agape. I mean, it's self-sacrificial. It's definitely an inconvenience. But he loved his brother. You know, we may never have an opportunity to be a Jack Twyman in our lives, but I wanted to share a different story as we close. So last week I just finished a workout at Gold's Gym, and I have this routine. Like when I finish working out, I'll go from Gold's and I walk to Target. It's around the corner, and that's like my cool down is to walk to Target. And I was in Target, and I was sitting in the electronics section, and I've got like my headphones in, and I'm in the zone, you know, I'm like all in it, and all of a sudden like someone touches my arm, and y'all, it was like freaked me out, like what is happening right now? And it was a lofter, this guy's name is David, and we just kind of shoot the breeze for a moment. We say hi, and then as we're talking, this little old, very frail old lady walks around the corner with her grocery cart, and she's like, almost in a panic, like I don't know where these DVDs are. She's looking for DVDs that day, and she was looking for Disney DVDs for her grandchildren. And I'm gonna be honest, my first reaction was like, I don't know what to do right now. Like, I don't know where DVDs are. So then I'm like, maybe I could get a Target employee to come and help you. Well, David just walked right up to her and was like, hey, let me help you. I'll go help you find these movies. So they walk like a few aisles over, and I mute my music for a moment because I just kind of want to hear their interaction. And then all I hear from David is, hey, I found Lion King. And I was like, this is so good. I just love it. This is so good. Yo, I don't know what the rest of David's day looked like, but I know that in that moment, there's probably some other things he could have been doing. I'm sure that moment was a slight inconvenience in the midst of his busy day. He may have had somewhere to go after that. I don't know. I didn't ask the question. But what I know is that someone needed help, and he didn't even think twice. I called David a few days ago just to say, like, that did something to me for the week. It did something for me. Y'all, we may never have the opportunity to be Jack Twyman, but every one of us has the opportunity to be a David. Every one of us has opportunities at our Target or our Whole Foods or our jobs or our families or our homes to show a love that just might be an inconvenience. And y'all, we are called to do that. John says, this is how we know that you love the Father, that you love his children, and that you obey his commands. That we would love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and that we would love our neighbors. Let me pray for us, and we'll conclude in worship. God, I thank you so much just for the opportunity that we have week in and week out to gather as a family. God, I just pray that this morning that we know how special this is. That we gather in unity because of the blood of your Son, Jesus. God, this morning, I pray that we would just continue to encounter you because we know that our lives will be changed when we do. That God, we would take a few moments this morning as we close just to respond. That we know, we trust and believe that 2 Timothy 3 says that all scripture is breathed out by you. And God, it is used to teach. So God, I pray this morning that we would wrestle with your word in this space. That God, we would be asking, what are we to take away? What are you speaking into our lives so that we do not leave this place the same way we entered this morning? But that God, you would make us look more like you. So God, I pray that as we conclude this time with the lifting of our voices, God, I just pray that we wouldn't leave this space until we do work with you. That God, we would spend a moment in reflection. If there's someone we need to speak to someone. If we need to go to the prayer stations at the front, go to the prayer stations. If we need to fall on our faces before you, let us not miss this moment to respond to your glory in this space. God, I pray that we would be a people marked by agape love. It's in Jesus' name we pray.